Hi there, I'm Nick from All Things Photography. This is my old skydiving top from 1997. This is my first ever Walkman from 1978.
It's rated as excellent on trust.
And it still works. I like to keep old things, so do I keep my old drones or did I upgrade to the DJI Mavic 3 Cine? Okay, so you were probably like most of us in the UK waiting with bated breath to see what the DJI brought out. Even though there'd been so many leaks, we pretty much knew everything, including the price about the Mavic 3 before it came out. So it was always interesting to see what DJI would say. We know their video was going to be good, their introduction and their promotion, and it was. It was absolutely fantastic. The footage from this drone is outstanding. Got no qualms about the footage from the ProRes. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's everything I thought I wanted from a drone. So I'll tell you quickly, I killed my Inspire 1 RAW last December, and since then I've been waiting for 11 months for the Mavic 3 to come out because I knew it was going to be a good drone, and I've got the money, it was all ready to go, and I was going to buy it. So did I? I didn't. Now there's a couple of reasons for that. I was so ready for this. The internet's been alight with this for months, so why didn't I buy it? And I'm going to keep this fairly short. I'm not going to do a review because you've probably seen them all already, so I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to explain why me, a professional filmmaker, photographer, isn't going to buy it just yet. I've got some good points here, some bad points, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of alternatives that I'm looking at. So the good, ProRes, fantastic. So ProRes is absolutely amazing. I've got it on the one of the Atomos Ninjas on top of the camera here, but I'm not shooting in ProRes. I've worked out that an 18-second clip is about 1 gigabyte of data, so it's overkill for most things. If you're going to be shooting bigger projects, whether it's for TV or for big adverts or anything that requires high quality, then ProRes is an amazing thing. And on this camera, I'm not going to lie, it's amazing. So when you're shooting at 5.1K, I think it's 5.1K with ProRes, it's amazing. It gives you so much more maneuverability for editing and pulling back details and things like that. Great for weddings if you're doing high-end weddings and things. The stability, if you've owned drones from DJI from day one with the things like the Phantom, the stability's always been amazing. The gimbals have been fantastic. So it's like having a tripod in the sky. Never had a problem with any of the drones I've had. I've had a lot of DJI drones. So yeah, this is no different. Holds like a rock, and the gimbal is absolutely superb. Smart controller, the new one, it's a bit divided. Some people like it, some don't. I don't really like having the screen below where I'm playing, where I'm using the drone. I prefer it big screen up there so I can actually forget my hands and just look at the screen. So, but it's much better. You've got a longer distance, you can fly a lot further. The screen's going to be it's a bit bigger, but it's going to be a lot better. So controller's a controller. All I'm worried about is actually capturing the footage and flying it properly. So I've got an alternative that I'm going to talk about in a second very quickly when I come to the other points. So the smart controller is good. It's an upgrade, but it's a lot of money. I think it's $1,100 for just the controller. It's up to you whether you think you've got something else that you can use already, like your smartphone or a tablet, you know, an iPad or something. Do you need that? I don't know. Then you've got obstacle avoidance. So the upgraded obstacle avoidance is now 360 degrees. So if it's following you through a wood or a forest or whatever, you're not going to crash it. It looks as though it's really good, very sensitive, and it works. Also helps with the return to home. So rather than going up 100 meters or whatever it is you go to, flying along and then landing, I think it's better that it can actually find the fastest point back. And I think it's gone from 20 meters where it studies what's in front to 200 meters. So it's a lot better with all of that. So that's good, but there's a bad point to it I'll come to. Then you've got the H.264, 265 log 10-bit. So one of my biggest questions before thinking about buying this was, I'm not always going to use ProRes because it's overkill for most jobs that I do. I've recently done I shot a £500,000 lodge for a promo video. I used the Air 2 and they loved it absolutely fine. So you're not going to use ProRes all the time if you do get the Cine version. So I need to know that the H.265 and 264 log is going to be good. 10-bit gives you, it's the next one down from kind of ProRes. You've got RAW, then ProRes, then you've got 10-bit, 12-bit video or whatever in these other formats. So I think the log in 10-bit should be good. And it's more than enough for most people. So if you don't necessarily need ProRes, then I would recommend going for the Fly More combo, because 10-bit log, D-log is going to be sufficient for most things you're going to do. And I actually worked out, I shouldn't really say this, but I worked out that the amount of stuff I do that needs ProRes doesn't justify me buying the actual Cine version, because most of my jobs I'll shoot 10-bit log, and if I do need a Cine version, I can hire one for the duration of that shoot. Job done. So I'm going to save £2 on the drone and maybe then hire one for however much it is for a couple of days and then charge that to the client anyway. So for me, it didn't make sense to actually buy the Cine version. But I think if you're going to go for the standard version, then I think apart from one thing I'm going to talk about in the bad, the log 10-bit footage is going to be fantastic. Then as a photographer, the 12-bit raw images 20 megapixel sensor is going to be fantastic. From what I've seen, they're really, really good. 20 megapixels is good. Everyone wants, you know, 50 megapixels, 60, whatever more. But the smaller the sensor and the more megapixels you put on it, the more noise and grain you're going to get in the images. So keeping it down to 20 megapixels, having larger pixels on a relatively smallish sensor, I think is a good idea. And 12-bit raw images, you're going to get some cracking footage, so cracking images from that. So I'd be super happy with that as an aerial camera. So that's the good. I won't go into all the other bits and pieces, because if you've had a Mavic 2 or an Air 2S, something like that, you know they're good drones. All I'm talking about is the difference between those drones that are existing and out there at the moment to this, because the prices are pretty much huge. So this takes me to the first point on my bad. Now, it's up to you whether you think this is a good or bad point, but the prices are very high. So for the Cine, you're looking at about $5,000, £4,250, I think it is. It's a lot of money for kind of incremental upgrades. I know they're huge. I know that ProRes is massive, but if you're not going to use it, it's a lot of money to spend on a drone when you've got other options out there that are pretty much as good, if not better. You can pick up an Inspire 2 now, dead cheap, or a lot cheaper than it was on release. So the price, if you can afford it, obviously it's fine. You're going to buy it. If you do this for a living and you're shooting a lot of pro jobs, then the price is not a problem. Going to go out and buy it. I was ready to buy it. I had the money to go. I do a lot of jobs, but because of some of these things, I'm going to hold fire. So the price, it's contentious. If you've got loads of money, it's not a problem. If you're sort of scraping by and you really want this drone, then it can be an issue. D-Log. So I mentioned that D-Log's good, especially in 10-bit, but from what I saw this morning, so I'm going to use a couple of YouTubers here that I looked at this morning, and I do trust them. They've both got 1 million or over or slightly under subscribers. They're really good, high professionals. One of them is at least, and I think I trust what they say. I trust what I've seen from them. So I'm going to use a couple of photos of clips from their footage, from their reviews, but I will put details down. Please go and look at their channels and their reviews of this drone, because they did an awesome job, an amazing job. They've had it for a few weeks, put it through its paces, really put it through its paces. So they've brought out some sort of inconsistencies, if you like. So please go there. If you're watching this, guys, I've used these things just to promote you, but to illustrate, obviously to try and help people make their mind up as to whether to buy one or not. So the first one is a really cool guy called Potato Jet. I love his videos. He's a fantastic guy. And he was out filming not in D-Log, but he was, sorry, not in ProRes. He was filming in D-Log 4K H.264, and he's graded the footage. And you can see in this first photo, he was talking about this, the colour bleeding. So as he was flying the drone fairly quickly, and as he went over certain colours, they were bleeding into the background. So you can see it on this one. There's some slight green where he's gone over a patch of green over some dirt, and the green has bled into the dirt on that first one where it was flying towards him. On the second one, he was flying past a motorbike, and you can see on this bit, the seat from the motorbike has bled into it's kind of greyish blue colours. It's bled into the actual background onto the dirt. And on the forks of the bike, you've got these two red metallic bits, and they've also bled into the background. So for me, for this sort of cost of drone, this sort of price and class of drone, I think that's kind of a big issue, because obviously if you do go for the Fly More combo without the ProRes, then you really want this kind of D-Log graded footage to be exceptional. You want it to be really good. So for me, that's an issue. If that continues and they don't manage to get a firmware upgrade for it, that could be a bit of a killer. Now, it does only happen, it appears to happen when you're flying fast. So obviously the processor, whatever, can't keep up with it. I've got my own thoughts on the processor, but I won't go into that. But it could be an older one that they're overclocking perhaps. But it's bleeding in, and so obviously can't keep up with fast movement and that sort of processing if he's filming in 10-bit or whatever. So that to me is an issue straight away, the colour bleeding on the D-Log footage. Then you've got another one which is quite a big issue, I think. The second YouTuber I watched was Parker Walbeck, high-end photographer, a ground film maker. He admits that he doesn't do a lot of drone work, but he does understand cameras, he understands quality footage and all that kind of stuff. So he did a really good video, and again, the link's below. Please go and watch it if you haven't done already. I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel. Great guy, brilliant business, you know, really knows his stuff. And what he was flying out on some salt plains in the States, I think it was, and he was flying the Mavic 3 Cine, and he said, right, let's test the time. So he put the drone down, took off, started recording, and he was flying in a mixture of the Cine mode, the normal mode, and in sports mode. And it started to land at 25 minutes. So the specs that DJI gave was 46 minutes. I always knew that was going to be too much. It wasn't going to reach those times. I was expecting 39, maybe 40-minute flight time in reality. But with flying a combination of those, fast, slow, bits and pieces, he got 25 minutes, which for me, it's a bit disappointing. You know, it's almost half of what you're expecting. So that for me wasn't great. So what he did, he said to DJI, look, this is what's just happened. I'm only getting 25 minutes. What's the score? They told him to do a firmware update. I think it was, if you have to watch the video, they said about a firmware upgrade on there. So he did another test and he went back to his studio, and you can see here that what he did, he took off in the studio. So he got no wind, no external influences on the video or anything. So he literally just took off, hovered, and he got 35 minutes. So that again, that's already 11 minutes less than the stated time. So that's pretty poor, I think, when they're, you know, really pushing this as 46 minutes, 3/4 of an hour in the sky, and you're only getting 35 minutes. I think that's pretty bad. So it kind of leads me on to a point I'll come to in a second. But that's not good unless they can do a firmware upgrade. So yeah, that disappointed me. Second to last, I've got the second camera. So most reviews I've seen have said it's all but useless. It's good for kind of spotting, zooming in and spotting things you want to go and film. So if you're doing nature, you can zoom in and spot maybe there's a lion or a tiger or a pride of lions, and you can spot them using that, and then you go in and film it. It's pretty much throttled, so you can only film in 4K 30, can't go to 25 or 24, you can't go faster, you can't change anything. It's fully automatic, so you can't change shutter speeds, anything like that. It's just full auto. Which is a bit lame, I think, and the same with photography. There's no raw photos, it's just JPEGs. So you're really throttled with that, and I'm a bit disappointed because when you put a Hasselblad camera on a camera like that, and then you put a second one above it, you want that to be at least not on par with it, but you want it to be pretty good. So I don't think I'd use that. I was hoping it was going to be really good. Now, I will be honest, I'll say one area it's good for, but up to about 7 times. I think when you go past that and using digital zoom, it looks pretty poor. But up to 7 times it's usable. So if you're doing roof inspections or things like that, maybe under bridges, whatever you're doing, if you are doing something simple like roof inspections where you just need an auto shot, autofocus, take the shot and you've zoomed right in without having to get too close to the building, then fair enough, it's good for that. But if you're going to be using this for professional stuff to add B-roll to other films that you're making or whatever you're doing, or you need high resolution professional photos, then it's not going to be really good. The only way you could use it is to do panoramas, take a whole series of photos, stitch them together and get one high res photo. But even then you haven't got raw. So it's not perfect, it's not great, and it's a bit of a disappointment for me, especially if you're paying $5,000 for something. Lastly, releasing a drone that isn't ready, I think is pretty poor. So on top of all of those things that I've mentioned, a lot of the features within the drone aren't going to be available until about January 2022 through firmware upgrades. Things like the APAS, I think it is 5, the obstacle avoidance, so that's not fully active until they do the firmware upgrade. I think it's things like the hyperlapse time-lapse in the camera is not active until then. So if you bought it now, you're going to have to wait maybe a couple of weeks for delivery, maybe even a bit longer, and then you're going to have to wait another month or so for the firmware upgrades to get the full drone that you've actually paid for. So I think in this day and age, that's pretty bad. When you've got a company as big as DJI, they've had all this time, 3 years to actually develop this thing and produce it. All the hype's been out there, they've delayed it, they've done this. I was expecting a ready-to-go drone. It's not worth me spending that money at the moment until they get all these issues sorted. So with the colour bleed, with the flight time, the noise, I haven't gone to that bit yet. With Parker Walbeck, he also took the drone into his studio. He wanted to see what compare the low light noise situation with the Mavic 2 Pro. So all he did was set the 2 cameras up in his studio, And you've got the Mavic 2 Pro on 6400 ISO, and you've got the Mavic 3 Cine on 6400 ISO. And as you can see in this photo, there's a bit more grain on the Mavic 3 Pro, so it doesn't seem to really be any better than a 1-inch sensor. You've got this 4/3 inch sensor on the Mavic 3 Cine. You'd expect with that bigger sensor with 20 megapixels to be better than a 1-inch sensor on the Mavic 2 Pro. And I think the Mavic 2 possibly does some kind of algorithms to actually smooth out the footage. But even so, the grain that's showing on the Mavic 3 Cine is not great. You know, this is 2021 coming up to 2022. 6400 ISO should be pretty much noise free these days. Most of the cameras I use, the S1H, and a lot of the Canons and Sonys out now, they're pretty much noise free at that level. So to have grain, again, I do a lot of night stuff. I love night photography, video work, and that's a bit disappointing again. So there's a few things there that until they address, I don't really want to spend that sort of good money on it. As a professional filmmaker and a photographer, I was hoping this was going to be perfect. It's almost there. Don't get me wrong, the ProRes on the Cine is absolutely amazing. It's a fantastic footage, but you're not going to use it all the time, trust me, unless you are doing adverts all the time, in which case you'd probably be using something like an Inspire or even bigger, carrying an mirrorless underneath. So for me, there's too many issues at the moment for me to buy it, so I'm just holding fire for a bit. I'm really upset, really sad, because I've waited for a year for this. So I'm just going to hold fire and see what happens in the real world. A couple of my friends have bought them, so maybe I'll look at their footage or maybe even check them out myself. So yeah, a bit disappointed. So for me, I've been talking to 2 other companies just to talk quickly about alternatives. And one of them is the XDynamics and the Evolve 2. So the Evolve one was quite good. It was quite a new concept, a bigger camera, removable lens, but it had its issues, had problems. So they've developed it and they've now got I've seen the reviews it's not out yet, but the Evolve 2 has been out with other reviewers. And from what I've seen, the footage is incredible. So it's very similar to this. It's a fixed camera, so fixed body, so you can't fold the legs in or anything. But it's a nice design. It's made of super hard carbon, I think it is. So it's a really tough drone, but it's got a camera similar to the Inspire. So you can actually remove the camera, put other cameras on. You can remove the lenses. It's a micro 4/3. It does ProRes. So it's a really, really good drone and camera. So it's not out yet. There are a couple of flaws I think they're working on. So it's going to be interesting to see what that's like, because for me, I've got 2 lenses from my old Inspire. I've got the 45mm Olympus and the 12mm Olympus. So they're both really good lenses, and those on a drone like that with a full micro 4/3 sensor, camera removable, etc., I think is going to beat the Mavic 3. So I'm waiting for that to come out. I'm going to kind of hedge my bets, if you like. So that's an option. Another option is with a relatively newish company coming up through the ranks, and that's Autel. Autel had a drone called the Pro 2, I think it was, came out a few years ago, 18 months ago, and the footage from that, it says it's 6K, but it's actually 5.1 or 5.2, but the footage from that is sublime. It's really good. Again, it's a smallish sensor, but they're bringing out, they've already brought out a few of their range to compete with the Mavic Air 2S and the Mini 2. So that they've brought out some really fantastic drones that are coming out soon, and in the pipeline they've got the Pro 3 coming out, which is a micro 4/3. I think it does 4K 120, and it's got the ProRes and everything. So that's another option. So I'm kind of holding fire till I see what those are going to bring. I've been talking to XDynamics, and they said because of the feedback they've had from people in the UK, they're going to see if they can bring it to market early next year. So kind of exciting. Regardless of what you think, it's exciting times because DJI have held the market for so long. We've all had DJI drones, so to have a couple of really kind of good bits of competition coming through will only push DJI to do better. So, you know, it's good for the consumer. It's good for us that we've got these companies competing and bringing out some amazing products. So I'm going to kind of leave it there. I did mention quickly about the smart controller. I've just ordered, so check this out. There's a link below. I like the smart controller. It looks good, but like I said, I prefer having a proper screen up above. So I've ordered, and it's coming from America now. I ordered it yesterday. It's the Tripltek 8-inch Pro. Now this is a beast of a tablet, but it's also a phone. You can put your card in there and you can use it like a phone, but you've got that constant data coming through. It's got up to 1.25 terabytes of internal memory with a card that you can put in. So you've got all of that, but you can drive a car over it. It takes about a ton of weight. It's just a tank, and it's brilliant. And it's got 1200 nits. I think the DJI is at 1100 nits or 1000 nits. This is 1200 nits. So it doesn't diminish like the iPads do in the sun or the iPhones in the sun. So it's a really good tablet, and it's also a tablet. So you can have all your other bits and pieces as well as not just having a smart controller. So I'm using that now. I'm going to use it with the with my drones at the moment until I decide what I'm going to do. But it's also compatible with any drone. So with the smart controller, if you did decide to sell this, you have to sell the controller with it. With the Tripltek, then obviously I can use that with Autel, with DJI. If I buy any other drones, you know, I can use it with all drones. So that's my reasoning behind that. So I like to dig deep. I'm a bit of a geek. I like to dig deep into things before I buy them, make sure they're exactly what I need for my work. And that's a big point. If the Mavic 3 Cine or the Pro or whatever are good for you and your business and what you do, grab one. It's an amazing drone, fantastic. For what I need and compared to what else is on the market, for me, until they address these issues, I'm just going to hold fire for a bit. Like I say, I'm gutted because I had the money. So I'm going to leave it there, but that's just my opinions. You can either hate me for it, I don't mind. If you disagree with me, give me a thumbs down. If you disagree, or if you don't like what I say, give me a thumbs down. If you don't like what I say, but it's kind of helped you a little bit, maybe give me a thumbs up. And if you like what I say and it's helped you in some way, then give us a thumbs up as well, and like and subscribe. So I appreciate you watching. Thanks very much. And those are just my thoughts on the Mavic 3 Cine.